Alright, I'm back, and this video is about um, the second section of the ethical standards, which is the social worker's ethical responsibilities to colleagues. This one should be a lot shorter than the last one, which was 30 minutes. This one only has 11 sections, and they're very, very short sections. So once again, this is the printout of the NASW Code of Ethics. I'm just breaking it down and giving you examples so that you can try to better understand what's going on in it. This one, I think, is probably more needed than the first one about the social worker's ethical responsibilities to clients, because that kind of stuff we kind of already know and we learn. This one is talking about the social worker's ethical responsibilities to colleagues, which we don't really talk too much about in grad school, or at least we didn't. Um, and it's very, very important, because some of the stuff here, and I'll point it out when I get to it, I had on my exam and you may have on yours. So we'll jump right into it. There are 11 sections, they're short, and hopefully this video won't be more than about 10-15 minutes. Okay, so the first one is respect. Social workers should treat their colleagues with respect and should represent accurately and fairly the qualifications, views, and obligations of colleagues. So, if you're in a work environment and your colleague has less experience than you, or they're right out of grad school, and they don't have that much experience, but you've been doing this for 10 years and they're green, as we call it, respect them still. They have the same degree as you, and they're trying to get to where you are. So help them. If anything, help them. You know what I mean? The reason I'm helping on YouTube is because when I started my first job, my colleagues did not respect me because I was just now entering grad school, and I only had a bachelor's degree, and I didn't have a lot of experience, and I didn't do things the way that the person before me did things, and it was hell. Sorry for using that word, but that's what it was. Trying to adjust, and I was really going into it looking at my coworkers as examples and role models, because they had been doing social work for so long. I thought, wow, all of this knowledge, all of this experience, I'm gonna have a great experience myself, and they're gonna teach me so much. But they did not respect me, and it was not that kind of thing. But I stayed there for 4 years, and we eventually got it all together. So thank God for that. So respect your colleagues. In respect to their qualifications. Their views may be different than yours, but still respect them. Um, you should also avoid any negative comments about your colleagues in communication with clients or other professionals. So if you're out in the community and you're meeting with other agencies, don't talk about your colleagues to other people in other agencies, because it makes you look bad as a professional. It's unethical, and it's not what we do as social workers. And then also your clients. Don't talk bad about your coworkers to your clients. Um, you may have a client that one of your old coworkers had, and now you have them, and the client didn't like that coworker when they were on that coworker's caseload, or whatever the situation may be, and they talk about them. Don't engage in that with your clients. Um, this includes unwarranted negative criticism uh, or demeaning comments that refer to your colleague's level of competence, or to individual attributes such as their race, gender, nationality, sex, color, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, marital status, religion, political beliefs, and all that. Um, Social workers should cooperate with social work colleagues and with the colleagues of other professions when such cooperation serves the well-being of the client. So if you don't get along with your coworker, don't just say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to work with them because, I don't like them and we don't get along," but you're working with them as it relates to a client. You have to learn to put that to the side and work with them for your client, and leave all the social stuff to the side. All right, so the second part is confidentiality. whenever you're talking to your coworkers or your colleagues about another client, always respect your client's confidentiality. So only give your coworkers or your colleagues the information they need to know about the client in order for them to help you. And don't expect them to give you any information other than what you need to help the client. So don't go and ask them, oh, how many people are they dating and all that stuff that's not relevant to helping the client in a professional sense. Part three, interdisciplinary collaboration. Social workers who are members of an interdisciplinary team should participate and contribute to decisions that affect the well-being of clients by drawing on perspectives, values, and experiences of the social work profession. So if you're on a team of different disciplines, you may be working with doctors and nurses and social workers and lawyers and all that other stuff. Participate and contribute to the conversation in your realm as a social worker, because what you have to contribute is very beneficial from a social work perspective that a lawyer may not have or a doctor or nurse may not have. Professional and ethical obligations of the interdisciplinary team as a whole and of its individual members should be clearly established. Social workers for whom a team decision raises ethical concerns should attempt to solve the problem through appropriate channels. So if you're having a problem with a team of people and there's an ethical concern and that's the problem, you need to go through the chain of command or whatever other appropriate channels to make sure that unethical concern is addressed. So if the disagreement cannot be resolved, then you should pursue other avenues to address the concerns consistent with the client's well-being. So, but you have to make sure you know what you're talking about. So if the whole team makes a decision you think is unethical, but nobody else does, you need to understand why they don't think it's unethical. And then if you still think it's unethical, then go up the chain of command. Okay, part four, disputes involving colleagues. Social workers should not take advantage of a dispute between a colleague and an employer to obtain a position or otherwise advance the social worker's own interests. So if you know that your employer is having an issue with your coworker, don't play on that problem between the two to try to get a promotion or, get in good with the employer. Stay out of it. That's the best thing I can say. Just stay out of it until they resolve it on their own. Social workers should not exploit clients in disputes with colleagues or engage clients in any appropriate discussion of conflicts between social workers and their colleagues. So if you know that Lisa and Mary don't like each other, don't talk to your clients about that, because your clients feed off of you and they look to you as a role model, regardless of if you think they do or not. They do kind of look up to you sometimes, depending on if you're a good social worker and you're ethical. Don't talk to your clients about issues that your coworkers are having with each other. Part five is consultation. Social workers should seek the advice of counsel of colleagues whenever such consultation is in the best interest of the client. So if you're having an point with a client that you just don't know how to deal with or you don't know how to approach it, talk to your colleagues about it and see if they can give you some point of view on how to handle the situation. So let's say you don't have any children and your client has three and your coworker has three or two or one or whatever, and you just can't seem to relate to your client. Talk with your coworker or your colleague and ask them how they think that you can try to relate to this client who says, oh, well, Miss Ashley, you don't have any children, so you don't understand. And I've had that happen before. So talk to someone who can relate and get consultation from them and see if they have any advice for you. Social workers should keep themselves informed about their colleagues' areas of expertise and competencies. Social workers should seek consultation only from colleagues who have demonstrated knowledge, expertise, and competence related to the subject of the consultation. So make sure, if you're working with a team of people, you know what their strengths are. You know what areas they work best in. And so, you know, then seek consultation for that. So if you're working with Jim and Tony, and Jim has experience and is very competent in helping people who are victims of domestic violence, and Tony doesn't, you need to know that Tony doesn't. So, because you don't want to go and ask Tony about domestic violence when Jim has all of the experience and the knowledge. When consulting with colleagues about clients, social workers should disclose the least amount of information necessary to achieve the purposes of consultation. So if you're, again, talking to your colleague about your client who has children, and you don't need to tell them, oh, by the way, all of their children have different dads, or, something like that. That's not relevant. Keep it relevant. Part 6, referral for services. Social workers should refer clients to other professionals when the professional's specialized knowledge or expertise is needed to serve the clients fully, or if you feel like you're not being effective in making reasonable progress with the client and that additional services are needed. So if you're working with a client and you can't help the client, you need to know when to refer out. You don't need to keep seeing that client, keep charging that client, or, you may be furthering their difficulties instead of helping them. So if you see after, let's say, you have a 10-week period to work with the client, and week 3, you see that you're not getting through, maybe in week 4, you need to say, okay, I need to refer you to someone else because I'm not helping you, and I don't want to waste the next 7 sessions, wasting your time and my time. Let's see. Social workers are prohibited from giving or receiving payment for a referral when no professional service is provided by the referring social worker. So don't refer your clients and think you're going to get paid for it. That's not ethical, especially if you didn't perform any services with your client, don't expect to get paid for it. Just refer them out and close out the case. Part 7, sexual relationships. Social workers who function as supervisors or educators should not engage in sexual activities or contact with supervisees, students, trainees, or other colleagues over whom they exercise professional authority. So if you are the CEO of an agency and under you are 3 program directors, you don't need to have a sexual relationship with program director 1, 2, or 3. And you don't need to have, and let's say you have coordinators under them, you don't need to have any kind of sexual relationship with anybody you supervise. Not interns, not students, no trainees, no volunteers, none of that. If you are directly supervising them, you cannot have a sexual relationship with that person. And you also shouldn't have any sexual relationship with any colleague that may cause a conflict of interest. Social workers who become involved in or anticipate becoming involved in a sexual relationship with a colleague have a duty to transfer their professional responsibilities when necessary to avoid a conflict of interest. So let's say that you and your colleague are on the same level, y'all become engaged in a sexual relationship, and then you get promoted to supervising that person. You need to either deny that promotion, or one of y'all need to terminate your employment. Like, you just don't need to have a sexual relationship in the workplace with anybody. Sexual harassment is part 8. Just make sure that you don't sexually harass any supervisees, trainees, students, colleagues. Don't make any sexual advances, solicitations, try to get any sexual favors for any kind of services or anything like that. Part 9, impairment of colleagues. If you have a direct knowledge that your colleague is impaired, and that's due to a personal problem, psychosis, distress, substance abuse, mental health difficulties that interferes with practice effectiveness, you should consult with that colleague when feasible and assist the colleague in taking remedial action. That's very important. I think that was on the exam. If you know that your colleague has substance abuse issues, talk to that colleague first and try to get them help. Okay. If you think that the social worker, your colleague's impairment interferes with the practice, and that that coworker has not taken the appropriate steps to address the problem, then you report it to the appropriate channels as established by the employer, the agency, the NASW, the licensing bodies, and other professional organizations. So talk to the coworker first, and then you talk to the person that's over y'all. So don't go and say, "Oh, um, Denise, you seem to have a problem with alcohol." Um, or you see Denise and she has a problem with alcohol. Don't just go straight to the supervisor. That causes conflict between you and Denise. Talk to Denise first and tell her, okay, you need to go and get help. After a week or two or three, maybe a month, she doesn't go and get help, then you go and talk to the supervisor or report her to the licensing board or whoever. Just make sure you go up the chain of command and whatever the protocol is. Incompetence of colleagues, same thing. If you know that your colleague is practicing EMDR and they're not competent to practice EMDR therapy with the client and they're still doing it anyway, talk to the colleague first. If they continue doing that, then you go and you talk to a supervisor. Same thing. Those two, impairment of colleague, incompetency of a colleague, those are on the exam that I had. So make sure always talk to the colleague first, and then you report if they don't correct the action within a reasonable time frame. And the last part, part 11, unethical conduct of colleagues, which is very, very, very important, and it's a very sticky situation because you can work with colleagues and you know that they're doing things that are unethical, and you don't want to necessarily be the tattletale. You have to, because if you don't, you're breaking the code of ethics. So if you know that a colleague is being unethical, they're sharing gossip about the client that's not relevant to helping the client. They're utilizing funds that's meant for the clients. You know, they have a credit card for the company and they're swiping it for gas for their own car. You know, just doing all kind of unethical stuff. You need to take adequate measures to discourage, prevent, expose, and correct the unethical conduct of your colleague. Um, let's see. And you also need to be knowledgeable about the procedures to report these things. So you need to know what the established policies are. If someone is being unethical, you need to know what your agency or your organization or your company's policy is for blowing the whistle. You need to make sure also that you are familiar with the national, state, and local procedures for handling ethical complaints. And you need to know the policies and procedures outlined by the NASW, the licensing, regulatory bodies, employers, agencies, and other professional organizations. You need to know all that because you need to know that you need to talk with the colleague first before reporting. Because if you go up and you report first to the agency or the licensing board, they're going to ask you, well, did you talk to the colleague first? If you say no, then you didn't do your research and you need to do your research. Okay? Let's see what else. Social workers who believe that a colleague has acted unethically should seek resolution by discussing their concerns with the colleague when feasible and when such discussion is likely to be productive. So if your coworker is known to be confrontational and you don't think that you talking to them is going to be productive, then just go ahead and talk to whoever. But if the coworker is level-headed and normally okay and they're being unethical, talk to them first. Always, always, always talk to the coworker first before going and reporting to higher authorities. Um, Social workers should defend and assist colleagues who are unjustly charged with unethical conduct. So if you know that Tony and Jim have an issue with each other, and Tony goes and reports that Jim has been unethical, and you know for sure that Jim hasn't been, you need to be on Jim's side and make sure that you don't let him get in trouble for something that he didn't do. Okay? See? Simple. And it's 20 minutes. Not even 20 minutes. Okay? Alright, next video is coming up on social workers' ethical responsibility in practice settings. Subscribe, like the video, share the video with your friends, your colleagues who are preparing for the license exam. This stuff is on it. Alright? Leave me comments, ask questions, email me, and I'll see you in the next video.